SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk. I'm joined by my ever-present co-host, Casey Trujillo, who is looking quite cold on this snowy February morning in Utah. And we're joined by the VP of Product at Paddle, Lucas Lovell, who I'm super pumped to have on the show today. And before we jump in too quickly and tell you a little bit about Lucas, and some of the things that we're excited about to talk with him today. He's on the product side. Most of our audience works in client success or customer education and has to interface with product. And that's why I'm pumped to talk to a fellow product guy. I sit next to all our VP of product. His office is right next to mine. So I'm sure we can probably commiserate about lots of similar challenges. But Lucas, welcome to SaaS Therapy, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me. Looking forward to the chat.
Awesome. Now, Lucas, so you live in London. You're originally from Australia. What are some other cool things our audience should know about you before we jump in and just dive in headlong into this conversation?
Good question. I mean, firstly, it's not a snowy day here in London. It's actually quite a warm day for middle of February, which is quite nice. But yeah, originally from Australia, originally from Adelaide in South Australia. Funnily enough, I actually studied law, which is not a common segue into working in tech or product. But did my law degree in Australia and decided that that wasn't a career path that I was particularly interested in the back half of the degree, and then decided to try and work out a way to get into tech, and decided that was going to be through building an app and starting a company. So prior to my gig here at Paddle, and I've been at Paddle for about 4 years, I was running my own SaaS company for about 5 or 6 years. And the catalyst for the move from South Australia to Paris in France, which is where I was before I was in London, was very much to do with that experience and sort of expanding the market opportunity with that company. So tech and SaaS has taken me all over the world, from Adelaide at home to Paris in France, and now across to London. And I have the great pleasure of sort of working with SaaS founders and lots of customer success people all over the world.
Oh, I love it.
That is amazing. So, Lucas, I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to seem like it has no relevance to our conversation, but it actually does. Have you ever eaten at a restaurant? It's a hamburger restaurant called Shake Shack.
No, I have not, is the short answer.
Okay.
Are there any Shake Shacks over on the other side of the world, even, Casey? Is that just a US-based chain?
Yeah, no. That's why I had to ask. Is it possible that he's ever eaten there? Because the reason why is Shake Shack is a very famous chain it's a hamburger shakes, Shake Shack, right? But the gentleman that started Shake Shack, he didn't plan on doing that. He was going to be a lawyer also. And he was about ready to take his bar exam, and he was having dinner with his uncle. And his uncle's like, "You look miserable. Like, why are you not excited? You're about ready to pass the bar and start your career." He's like, "I don't know if I want to do this." He's like, "Well, what would you want to do?" He's like, "I want to go start a restaurant." He's like, "Then go do that. Don't be miserable." And it turned out very well for him. So, Lucas, when it's available to invest in your company, hit me up, because lawyer turned investor. I mean, that's the only other story I know. So that's 1 for 1. That's 100% guaranteed money back on if you invest. So Todd, you heard it here first. Lucas is going big time.
Yes,
it's a proven path.
Yeah, it's proven.
If especially Casey, you come from the sales world, so maybe you butt heads with legal because they're the ones who question every deal you put together to make sure that it's done properly. But so I guess Lucas, it's a pretty cool path to think that you went from being legal to startup founder to now running product development at another large SaaS company. And so one of the things that I'd be curious, and what has been different for you making the shift from being a startup founder to now focusing more, and particularly on product, and what did you learn that was really valuable in your startup life that now you're applying today?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is when I decided, and I won't go into the whole backstory, but when I made the transition from being a founder of my own company into sort of wanting to work at a larger, more established company, I think I was attracted to product management because I felt that that was probably going to be the best use of my skill set. One of the core part of building a company, at least a software company from the start, is very much spinning up a product, right? Finding some customers and sort of validating the problem space and then going from there. And I think as a founder, you sort of see all corners of the company, and you have to play or wear all hats, I guess, as they say. So you have to wear the legal hat, you have to wear the finance hat, you have to wear the sales hat. I've sold a lot in my time as a founder, not in my time as a VP of product, but in my time as a founder, I sold a lot and had to sort of manage a lot of our early customers when it's just a few of you in the business. And so I think that actually positioned me well in product, because product is the sort of role that has quite a large surface area. And I think good product people, or I like to think good product people, one of their strengths is that they can interface with everyone in the organization. So our stakeholder network as a product person is everybody. Like there's no function of a company that doesn't interface with product for some sort of reason. And so I think that the skills I learned being a founder, which was a wide set of kind of generalist skills, has very much been useful as I've transitioned into sort of a product role and a product leadership role. I think like when I joined Paddle was smaller than it is now. So Paddle's sort of 300 people, quite a big company. We have offices in the US and here in Europe. We have 5,000 customers around the world. We process a lot of money through the platform every year. When I joined 4 years ago, it was a much smaller company, on the same trajectory, but a much smaller company. And so I've definitely felt like how my skill set has been used in different ways over the course of that journey as well, and sort of sitting in a VP of product role now, where there's a lot more operational weight to the role, like running the team and creating an environment for other product managers to succeed in. But ultimately, I think the skills that I learned as a founder over 5 or 6 years have been super valuable, and something that have gave me a really good foundation for sort of being in the role that I'm in now.
Okay, so I just get excited to talk to people on the product side. I know Casey has some cool questions, but I want to jump in really quick, because something you said that stuck out to me that I really liked was the fact that as a person in product, your stakeholder is everyone, which is true. A lot of times, people in product are also because they are so central to the success of everybody else in the business. They're oftentimes they're kind of, I don't know, the magnet for all of the frustration and the flack from so many other people inside of the business. And it's tough because you have a lot of times, like I would say, a lot of the CS people that we talk to, they feel like they're the ones who get all of the hate and the frustration because they're the front line dealing with angry customers. But then they just pass all that on to product usually. So I am really curious, in your experience, A, does that resonate with you? Is that something that you see a lot? And then B, how do you manage all of the loud voices coming at you from a million different angles?
Sure. I mean, firstly, I think you have to have a cool head. And secondly, you need to have empathy. And I think when I am in situations like that, where I'm having a conversation with a frustrated salesperson who is struggling to close a deal because of a lack of feature or capability, I think back to when I was that salesperson in my own company with a relatively immature product that didn't serve every single need of the customer, and feeling quite frustrated by that. So I think the first thing I try and remind myself of when I'm in those situations is to have empathy, to have empathy, and to try to see the world from their perspective. And it's the same thing with success stakeholders, right? Like these people are managing, especially in Paddle's case, our top customers pay us like over $1 million a year, and we are critical infrastructure for our customers, right? We're a payments company, so we're critical infrastructure. So the relationship with Paddle is highly important to them. Highly important to them. If something goes wrong with Paddle, they don't capture their revenue. So again, it's critical infrastructure. So the people who are managing those relationships, are dealing with people who perceive it in that way, and that can be quite hard, right? That can be quite challenging. And I think as a product person, we need to remind ourselves that we're all experiencing the world a little bit differently, and we need to make sure that we have empathy for the people in other functions who are serving the business in a different way, and are experiencing things in a different way. So I think for me, it's very much about having empathy for everyone in the company, and I think it's also about like really, I think, encouraging or facilitating this idea that we're all in it together and that we are one business and that we all actually want the same thing at the end of the day. Like if you were to take your priority and my priority and that person's priority and actually roll them all up into what's the overall priority, the overall priority is exactly the same. We all want the business to be successful. We all want our customers to be successful. We just have a bit of a different vantage point. So I'll give you a bit of a taste of something that I often say to people when I might get a request from our like go-to-market ops team who needs something done in the product to sort of to help with pricing or something. I'm thinking of a recent example, and we got into a conversation, and they clearly felt really passionately about what they needed. And the first thing I said to them was, "It's not my job to tell you this is a bad idea, right? It's not my job to tell you that I don't want to see this in the product. My job isn't to say this thing is important and that thing isn't important. My job is to say, here are all the important things. Which one is the most important, right? So you sort of take away that combative nature out of it, where you're not arguing about whether something is important or not important. What you're actually saying is all of these things are important. How do we best deploy our resources in the interest of the company at large? So I think there's lots of sort of things that product people probably deploy in situations like that, where you're at the coalface of everyone's requests and asks quite often. And ultimately, it's about maintaining goal alignment, maintaining priority alignment, but also really sort of showing empathy for everyone's perspective and vantage point.
So Lucas, this is SaaS therapy. So we pride ourselves into getting into the nitty gritty. So that's a term here in the States of like, we're gonna actually tell the honest truth here, Lucas.
Yeah.
That was very political. I want to get into the real answer here.
How do you decide? Will say though, can I to defend Lucas, having been around product people,
Todd. There's no defending this, Todd.
He's right though. It is a massive challenge, and I love the empathy approach. Right? So Lucas is preaching good stuff here.
That's all good.
But yeah, we'll pull back the layers just a little bit.
But at the end of the day, Lucas, someone has to make the call.
Yeah.
What goes in the product? You can't have all the voices. So give our audience, peel back the layers here. How do you actually decide what gets in the product? There's things that help the product renew. There's things that help the product sell.
Yep.
How do you eventually get to the point where you're making the decision? Is it you making the decision? Is it an executive team making the decision? What's the frameworks? Just give people, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just, but help people understand. How do you actually do it? Because I've been with companies where everybody gets a dollar amount and everybody puts a dollar amount and you have so much money and you can put it and everybody says, this is the feature we want. This is the feature that we want. And everybody puts a dollar. Guess what? That strays from where the business actually wants to go because everybody's really, they don't want to be, but they're selfish. They're just saying, here's what I need in my product today to get this deal. And they're not thinking long-term like you are. Like the thing about product is you're level-headed, you're thinking long-term about this product. Like I can't do every little feature or all of a sudden this product means nothing to nobody, right?
Yeah.
So help us get into the nitty-gritty of this a little bit. It's paddle. You guys are running your sprint. You're having all this heated discussion between sales and CS and your new CROs saying, we got to triple sales this year. And you're having this discussion. How do decisions actually finally get made? And give us a little bit of what that actually looks like. Because I don't think a lot of our audience is in that room when the decision actually is made about what takes place. They hear what you just said. They get a lot of that. But how does it actually happen?
So the way we do this at Paddle is we collect inputs. So we collect inputs from all corners of the organization, and we run it through a prioritization framework and then spit it out at the other end. Now, we actually provide a blueprint or a framework that we are using to support our decisions. And when the inputs come in, we encourage them to provide us with the information that we can put into this framework to help us decide what to prioritize. And at Paddle, that framework looks like this. There are 5 things that we consider.
There we go. This is good, Todd. Now we're getting into it. Now we're getting good stuff.
And what we're doing is building a business case for why we should do something, right?
Very
so
cool.
The first one is acquisition. Does it help us acquire net new customers? The second one is monetization. Does it help us monetize our existing customers better or more?
Is
The
this in
third one is
priority?
no. This is just the 5
This
points
is
on
just
the
5
framework.
things. They're
Yep.
not priority. This isn't like number 1 is this, number
No.
2 is this. This is just the 5 things.
The third one is retention. So does it help us avoid a churn risk or avoid churn risk generally? The fourth one is cost. So does it reduce costs for the business or improve gross margin efficiency? And the fifth one is risk. Does it reduce our risk exposure? Now, that's a great framework because almost everything that you build into a product, you can point to either one or multiple of those different business outcomes. Is it helping us win new business? Is it helping us make more money from the install base? Is it helping us keep our customers and retaining them? Is it helping us reducing costs? And is it helping reduce our exposure to risk? Now, what it also encapsulates is work required to support our customers, which is we need this new feature to acquire a customer in this segment, or if we're going to expand into this market, then we need to build X, Y, and Z. It also enables us to factor in internal optimization. So, for example, we might be using a set of tooling inefficiently. We might be taking on fees in certain markets because we haven't done X, Y, and Z. And none of those are flashy customer-facing widgets. They're just internal optimizations that are important for building a scalable company and important for operational efficiency. And risk also is like, hey, like we need to make sure that we are staying on the right side of the law, and compliance and global regulations are changing all the time. So we need to make sure we factor that in. So it's actually a really good framework, and it's really powerful because what we then do is that when a stakeholder in the business comes to us, the fact that we've socialized that framework means that they start to speak our language. So what we're actually doing is we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, right? We're all trying to sketch out on the same piece of paper. You're not bringing me something over here and then me taking something over the other side of the coin and saying I view this differently. What we've actually done is forced everyone to be sketching from the same piece of paper and reading the same piece of paper. And then what we try and do is we try and bring data to the conversation, and we use data to sort of inform those things. So if someone says, listen, I think, in the US, we've got this opportunity in the gaming sector, and we think that the size of that market is X, Y, Z, and we can factor that into the prioritization framework. So what we then have is we have all this great information that we can go and use to make good decisions. And the collation of that is done across the whole product team. So it's not Lucas doing that, right? It's our product managers, it's our group product leaders, it's everyone working with stakeholders, taking those inputs. And then usually on a cadence, what we'll do is as a team, we'll review them. And we aren't very top down in our prioritization decisions. We definitely have sort of veto rights at a leadership level, as I think most companies do, to be really blunt with you. But we encourage the teams themselves. So when I say teams, the product teams, to come back up with their perspective. And then what we'll usually do is take our thinking to myself and our executive team to sort of validate. And I don't want to use the word approve, but to get their feedback on like, listen, this is the thinking. These are the inputs we've gathered. This is how we think we're going to drive best outcomes for the company. Like, do you see the world differently? Are we aligned? We get the alignment and we move forward and we keep going, right? And to be honest, we only actually introduced this prioritization framework maybe about a year and a half ago. And it's been a really effective way of driving alignment around the decisions we're making, because it also means that we're exposing the reasons why we make a decision. And that's one of the most important things as a product leader, is, one thing that really frustrates stakeholders is when we make a decision to go and build these 11 things and no one knows why, right? If you really want your thing in that group of 11 and it hasn't made it, if I can tell you exactly why it hasn't made it, and I can show you why the business impact of these things is such that we prioritize them, then they're actually pretty comfortable. Most people go, yeah, actually, I sort of get that. Makes sense. Thanks for listening. Thanks for working with me through that process, and let's go. So it really works. It really does work. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's no friction. I'm not trying to paint a perfect picture. There's always friction. There's always disagreement. Some people say, listen, I don't think that data point is spot on, or I think you should be looking at this. But broadly, it does help.
Oh, so good, Lucas. I want to do one follow-up, Todd, and then throw it over to you. But Lucas, again, we work with software vendors all the time, Todd and I, and everybody's approach is a little bit differently. I love the framework. Thank you for peeling back the curtain. I think that really helped a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to pass this on to their product team. Say, hey, do we do this? But the question I have next is, how much sway or how much weight is behind the voice of the customer? And how do you capture the voice of the customer? Because I've heard a lot of people say, hey, if we listen to our customers, we would still be in horses and buggies and just doing different types of buggies. No one wanted the car, and we invented the car, and that's when people get rubbed the wrong way with product people. It's like, oh yeah, everything. Our customers know nothing, right?
Yeah.
So how do you also balance that? Is there a framework you use for that in voice of the customer plus your own intuition of where you want to lead the customer, because you are maybe one or two steps ahead of your customer and what they're thinking about? Like, that's not their job, the customer. They have a daytime business. They're using payment processing to do a part of their job, but that's not the purpose of their job, right? So how do you balance voice of the customer with your intuition of where the product needs to go to help the customer?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's really hard. There's no perfect answer to that question. I think we have a set of operating principles in product, and the first one of those is customer centricity. The second one is being data informed, but the first one is customer centricity, and we really believe in the voice of the customer and engaging deeply with our customers, especially given the criticality of our tool to our customers and the impact that we can have on their growth, right? So one of the great things about Paddle, or about fintech generally, for most fintech companies, where it's a take rate model, is that our success is perfectly aligned because we take a percentage of every of their transactions. So we only grow that account as they grow. So if they grow like the clappers, we grow with them. If they're not growing, that account isn't growing for us. So we have a deep interest in helping our customers succeed and helping our customers grow their businesses, because for us, that's our growth as well, right? It's one of the beauties of the take rate model from our perspective as a company. It's why the business model is so brilliant. So I think the very fact that our goals are perfectly aligned, right, does help drive customer centricity, because we know that by listening to customers and by building things that are going to make our customers more successful, we inherently become successful as a company. So there's a lot of power in that, I think. And in terms of like the how do we sort of bring the customer voice into product thinking? The first one is we all do customer discovery. So we do full end-to-end product lifecycle. So our expectations of product managers is that they're doing A, customer discovery, B, delivery, and C, customer adoption. So it starts at the product lifecycle, the product process starts and ends with the customer. It's saying, have you validated this problem with the customer? And ultimately, once you go build it, have you got it into the hands of the customer and made sure that the hypothesis that we set out with has actually been shown? We also engage pretty heavily with our commercial and go-to-market teams. So we have customer discovery calls with all of our top customers. We use interventions in the product to engage long-tail customers that might not have an account manager or a success manager. We also we also use all of our sales intelligence tooling. So we use Gong, and we have keyword streams set up that ping us calls when certain things about the product are mentioned, and it will automatically ping Slack, and we'll say, listen, this was mentioned in this call that just happened a few hours ago. Here's the snippet, go and listen to it. So what we've tried to do is build process around making sure that the customer voice is front and center. And to be honest with you, like we are far from perfect. Like we could be more customer centric than what we are. And there are definitely people in the product team for whom that comes more naturally. And that's another interesting one, right? Like product people come from all sorts of backgrounds. Product people who came from more commercial backgrounds or came from sales or success backgrounds tend to come into product and really feel at ease with some of that sort of more customer facing components of the role and really like dive into that, like fetching customer data and talking to customers. Folks who come into product from like the engineering or technical side, it's usually a bit of a growth area for them. So we definitely have sort of varying levels of customer centricity in the product team. and sort of ability to bring the customer voice into the equation. But the more sort of we can enable our product teams to access customer insight, the better they'll be, and that's really important for us.
Okay, so I've loved this so far. I'm geeking out. It's right. This is right in my wheelhouse of stuff that just gets me really excited, Lucas. So, just to summarize, I feel like where we've been so far. A lot of times when I think about product and prioritization, usually most organizations prioritize their product when they're managing product development, and most of it tends to go on a value and versus an effort framework. Everything we've talked about so far is on the value side. What's the value to the business? What's the value to the customer? I'm curious because the part we haven't really mentioned in your prioritization is around the effort side, right? How much money is this going to cost? How much time is it going to take? How do you weigh effort along with all of the value?
Yeah, absolutely. Effort is so important. It's super important. I mean, it's the other side of the axis, right? It's the other piece that plays into the decision to actually go and do something. Effort's hard because often you're trying to make prioritization decisions before you've done all of the scoping and planning and technical discovery on what will be required. So there's always an element of imperfection to effort because, we're saying, hey, listen, we think this great thing can go and solve a problem for X percentage of our customer base. And we'll typically make a decision to pursue that, right, based on the value framework before we've actually gone and scoped out the thing technically. So we do really rely on our engineering leaders to help us with directional effort estimates. And this is where the concept of t-shirt sizing comes into product a lot, where it's not about going and you can't go and scope everything out technically to the T before you decide to make a decision to do it, right? You need to sort of work out, I wonder how big that's going to be. I'm not quite sure. So this is where the engineering voice is so important and why it's so important to bring engineers along the journey from the start. Because if they're exposed to the business problem and they're exposed to the proposed solution in the language of a product person or the proposed solution in the language of the customer outcome, so I want it to do X for a customer, right? All that context enables them to make a directional or give a directional estimate on effort that might be S, M, L, XL. And we have some frameworks on this as well, right? So we use those frameworks when we sort of do our road mapping. Like engineering will come in and say, listen, that's a pretty small thing. That's the sort of thing that's probably about a sprint's worth of work, or that's a super meaty problem. Like that's like months worth of work for one team. And then there's every flavor of in between. And we sort of use that to guide our road mapping. So then what you're doing is you're going from prioritization to actual road mapping, which are two different things, right? So we can say these are the priorities, these are the customer problems that we want to go and address, and that can be an external customer or an internal customer, by the way. These are the set of problems that we want to go and address, and the conversion of that set of priorities to a roadmap, right? Of we're going to go and do X, Y, and Z in Q3 or Q4 requires that engineering voice to give a directional estimate on effort, which can be really challenging. So you are reliant on some sort of estimation component of that, and then in terms of like how you bring those two things together, right? Like that is hard, and we have a philosophy in product that we try and deliver value iteratively. So if we have a big meaty problem that we want to solve, and the solution is something that looks like it'll take 6 or 7 months to build, the first question will be that we'll ask is, how can we deliver it iteratively? Can we deliver 20% of the value, right, after 20% of the work? Or can we deliver 50% of the value with 70% of the work, right? And challenge ourselves to slice projects up into chunks of sort of value addition to the product or the platform. Which sometimes it's not possible because you're building towards one major outcome. But in most cases, if you challenge yourself to think in that way, it can be done. And that's generally the approach that we take.
That's super cool, Lucas. Okay. I believe that people that are your seat are the most valuable and underappreciated. Salespeople, they get commission, they feel great about themselves. The customer success manager gets to renew the deal, and they see that. And the product person's there scoping these things out, doing all this hard work, making all these decisions. Eventually gets programmed in, and no one recognizes them at all. So, Lucas, how can we be a better partner to product? This is your chance to vent. This is your chance just to be real with us. You're talking to
make Casey's the sales guy who's constantly complaining. Just take
all
of your frustration and just throw it on
Unload
him.
it.
Yeah.
How do customer success people, how do account executives, how can they be a better partner to you?
Ooh,
and we'll make sure your team doesn't listen to this, so you can be as honest as you want to.
Yeah, that is a great question. How can they be a better partner? I think one of the frustrations that we often have in product, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to vent if that's okay with you guys. I just make sure this doesn't get shared internally. I think you'd be blown away by the number of requests for features or functions or something that a salesperson wants in the product that are solved in the product already, right? Which ultimately just comes down to a lack of product understanding, or a lack of time spent investing in the product, or time spent learning and going and trying to answer that question for yourself. And that just eats up the time of P&E people. It's a problem that we've had at Paddle in the past. We have a wonderful go-to-market team, by the way. Like, I get along with everyone really, really well. And we've worked a lot at this over time, which is, Paddle's a complex product as well. So it's a bit of a different environment. Like, it's fintech. It's hard to grapple with. It's got a large surface area. And like, my expectation is never that. I mean, I don't even know every corner of the product, right? Especially in a leadership role when you're a bit further away from the mechanics. But my expectation is not that everyone knows everything, but a typical bugbear of a product person is someone in a go-to-market team coming with a really obvious question or an obvious request that is already answered or already exists. That happens less often now at Paddle than it used to. But I think it's
awesome
it's a really important one.
Yeah.
And so, like, I just think it makes you a better salesperson. Like, if you're like, the depth of your product understanding is often correlated with your success as an AE. Like, I could tell you all the best AEs I've worked with at Paddle, and it's usually the top 2 or 3 people in terms of their product understanding. Like, our top salespeople know the product back to front, and they can answer any question about it, right? And I think they invest time early to build that knowledge and to build that domain expertise. And they get a bit technical, to be honest. Like, a good AE comes in and goes, oh, like, a lot of API stuff here, a lot of webhook stuff. Like, that's all really useful to the customers. Like, I need to go and learn that language a little bit, right? And I think salespeople who do that are super successful, especially at a company like Paddle. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is probably around not gatekeeping access to customers too much. So I think
that's so
like,
good. I love that.
I really believe in democratizing access to customers in a business. I think it's a hard step for lots of companies to take, especially when you have very high ticket customers like you do at Paddle, where our top customers pay us a lot of money and we're critical infrastructure. But I really believe that if you unlock access to customers, especially within product teams, you suddenly get product people who are much more invested in those customers as well, and actually end up helping the account managers and the CS folks drive better relationships and drive better outcomes. But you also build empathy. You build a lot more customer empathy in the product team, because if the PM has spoken to that customer, has a relationship with that customer, and that customer comes back with a request, guess what? That request is listened to a little bit more deeply and a little bit more carefully, purely based on the fact that there's a relationship there between the PM and the customer, right?
Okay, Lucas, I got to ask you a quick question on that. Is that getting you involved earlier? Because again, unfortunately, not speaking from experience, I have a friend, okay, we'll call him Casey, but he usually brings product in when the customer's upset.
Yeah.
and they want a new feature, and then the product person comes in and they're set up to look as like, I mean, at the end of the day, they just look like the bad person here, because they're like,
Right.
well,
Yeah.
we could maybe get that in, and the customer's pressuring them, and they leave the call and they're like, gosh, that was horrible. You got me on the call. They pressured me for a deadline. So are you saying you'd want to be introduced a little bit earlier? How would you actually do that introduction so they get to meet you on better terms versus when it's a moment of need and frustration?
Yeah, yeah. I love getting involved early. I think at Paddle we do also, again, given sort of the criticality of the investment, like it's a high, like payments is high switching costs, right? It's critical infrastructure, high switching costs. When our customers come to us in a sales process, at the time they're prospects, they are investing in a very long term partnership, right? That is important for their business. And so they want to buy into Paddle's vision. Yeah. This is a great opportunity to bring a product person in, because I can walk into that room and, in a really positive frame, present a really exciting future for them, right? Because I can say, this is our vision, this is our roadmap. And we have ways of presenting roadmaps to customers in a way that is directional or thematic and not committal and getting ourselves cornered, right? And shorter term, we'll commit to stuff in quarters, right? And we'll be upfront about when we don't make it. We sell to software companies, so they understand that. They do the same thing. But we'll always present something a little bit more long term about, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about that, we want to go in this direction. And that's a really good starting point, because it's a way of saying, hey, we're getting married, right? And like, we want to align on what our future looks like together. And I can be a conduit to that. And that's a really nice feeling. Like, you walk away from that conversation going, they loved that and I loved that. Like, they're a great customer. I really like what Paddle's building and what they're doing. And we've got a really great relationship to look forward to here. So I think that's a great opportunity. And we typically do that. Like, I'll go into a lot of sales calls like towards the end of a sales deal when there's a bit of intent there, and sort of help sort of help form, I guess, help create that shared vision together. And that's a really nice way to start. And then, I think also bringing product people in for the purpose of discovery. Like, all of our PMs have ideas about things they want to build, and they love to get FaceTime with the customer for 45 minutes or half an hour and just ask them some questions about their experience with Paddle. And if you're doing that at a time where the customer isn't upset or annoyed, then again, you're sort of facilitating the blossoming of a great relationship between a product person and a customer. So I also, by the way, I'll say this out loud, I also think it's part of my job to front customers when they're unhappy. Like, I don't think that that's a bad use of my time. I don't necessarily get frustrated at a CSM or an AE or whoever's on the account when they say, listen, Lucas, this person is a little bit pissed off about this thing that we've done, or about an outage that happened a few weeks ago, or about this thing here. And I just need you to talk to them, and I need you to hear them, and I need you to sympathize, and I need you to understand. And I think that's part of the job. It is. So I'm comfortable with that. But to your point, getting the relationship off to a good start is very, very helpful.
Lucas, there's so many golden nuggets in that. I love it so much. Let me see if I can synthesize just two main points that I heard in everything you just shared there. First half of this, if I'm on the sales side or I'm on the success side, if I want to be a good partner, one, become more acquainted with the power that's in the product. One, because it'll help you understand the people on the product side of the business better, but two, it'll put you into a seat as a trusted advisor so you can be more successful. Ultimately, your customers will be better served by you as a seller, as a success manager, if you take the time to invest and understand the product. Second, not gatekeeping and allowing Lucas in, or Lucas's team. Amazing, because you're going to get better outcomes with the customer. They're going to get what they want. They're going to have more excitement about the future, rather than, one of the things that I worry about when product is too divorced from the customer from an interaction perspective is you're building, and you might be diverging, not necessarily because it's what the customer doesn't need, but because now the seller might be reinforcing a bad idea for the customer, right? All they're doing is basically just, playing the, I totally get it. Yeah, I really wish it could do this. Yeah, I wish it could do this. Now they're totally blind to all the wonderful beauty that you're bringing down the pipe. And now you have to sell all of that super hard, and it feels like they missed out on something. So I think that's a really beautiful idea. Now we've talked a lot about kind of for the last little bit, at least, about some of the gaps or frustrations that a lot of product and CS teams face. I want to turn the table on you. I'm going to put you on the spot. So if you don't have come up with an amazing idea, it's okay.
Yeah.
We'll cut it or something. No, we'll leave it in. The awkwardness we'll leave in. It'll be great. But the so can you tell me about a time where it's all come together? Like, can you think of a really awesome moment, either before paddle or at paddle, where just the stars aligned, everybody got together, and like you saw something amazing happen where you're like, this was a huge win?
Ooh, good question. I'll give you a couple of examples. I think we have like the relationship. I'll be a bit vulnerable. When I started at Paddle and when I joined Paddle and was in a product role, and then was in a leadership role pretty soon after. The relationship between P&E and the go-to-market org was not strong at all. There was no trust, right? And to be honest, I was probably a part of that. Like I'm not excusing myself from that. Like there wasn't trust between the two orgs, and that was because I think the product team didn't show customer centricity. We got frustrated a lot at the way that some of our go-to-market teams, to your point, would introduce us to customers in those sorts of moments, and we were very combative, right? Again, I'm being very candid. Like the reality is, it's a great company and everything is good, but like there was a sort of a fractious period that was a bit difficult, and we worked on that a lot, and we worked on that by getting in rooms together and building relationships and getting to know each other, right? And I think there was a presentation. So we do a stakeholder roadshow every quarter where the product leadership team goes around to all our core stakeholder groups. We present our plans, and we present our plans and we get their feedback. So we have a deck and we show them the deck. And these are all the decisions that we're thinking of making. And we don't position it as a ratification exercise. We say, what's your input? What are your reactions? What's your feedback? Do you like it? Do you don't like it? What should we reconsider? And we do that as part of the planning process.
That's cool.
And 3 years ago, like when we used to do that, it was painful because there was so much friction. And I think there was a point about a year ago, I'd say, or a year and a bit ago, where we did one of these stakeholder roadshows with our sales and success leadership team. And we presented our priorities, and we just got we got just a resounding, guys, this is amazing. This is exactly what our customers want. And I think for me at that point, I went, wow, like that's 2 years of work to build the customer centricity, to build the trust with our go-to-market counterparts, to enter that room and walk out of it with like an amazing sense of alignment. And I think everyone felt it. Like I remember our sales leader WhatsApped me straight after and he said, dude, that was like so good. Like you guys have prioritized everything that we would prioritize. And then it's like, wow, we are actually all singing from the same hymn sheet, right? And that was a really powerful moment for me, I think, because of what we'd been through. And there are other reasons why we'd sort of been in that world that I won't get into. But that sense of alignment at that point was really powerful.
That is awesome, Lucas. I've always heard people say that, yeah, my overnight success took 14 years or my overnight success took 2 years. I mean, we get into that notion that there's just this magic thing that turns on one day, but it's the compound effect of putting in the effort, doing those quarterly things over and over and again. And it's not necessarily you aligned to sales or that sales aligned to you, but you aligned to the customer. And that's pretty freaking amazing. So Lucas, well done. We appreciate you being real with everyone. And that's the goal of this podcast is SaaS therapy, is let's actually just be real with each other. There's too many people on LinkedIn that post this and post that about how they do everything right and everything's wonderful. And you're like, bull, like what you're saying right now, you don't do that. I know you don't do that. And if you do that, you must be a company of one. Because we all have friction. We're all human beings. We all have different ideas. We all have different opinions. And it takes a lot of effort to get to where you're at. So thank you for being real with us. That was awesome. Lucas, that was fantastic. Todd, this has been good stuff in here. I mean, there's like 6 gems that people should be taking away on this one.
So Lucas, if people want to get a hold of you after this, learn more about you, learn more about Paddle, what's the right way to do that?
Yeah, you can get hold of me on LinkedIn. Feel free to get in touch. X or Twitter or whatever we call it these days. I'm present and active on both of those platforms. And yeah, I'm happy to share my email as well if you'd like to pop it in the show notes, Todd. So yeah, very very happy to chat and hear from you all.
So good. Lucas, we always ask one last question at the end of every single one of these episodes. Because this is SaaS therapy, and we've had a very good therapeutic conversation today.
Yeah.
For every good therapy session, there's always homework. There is always an assignment. If you could give our audience one action item that they could implement in their own lives, what homework assignment would you give our audience today?
Oh, so one thing that they can go away and do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, give them some actionable thing that they can apply based off of what we talked about today.
Based off of what we spoke about today. I think the thing. Oh, that's a tough question.
I know. Well, it's therapy. We got to have a
Lucas,
good one.
I know mine. You gave me one that I'm going into, and it reminded me of a podcast we just recently did with Samantha Murray. She was at one point of her career, she was the head of customer education at Shopify. And she said this, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. But then you re-emphasized it. Well, she said, when someone gets hired at Shopify, it doesn't matter if you're an executive, senior leader, or just a normal employee at Shopify, you spend your first week or two in the product.
Mm-hmm.
You go in and learn the product. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty awesome. And then you said, hey, half of the requests that people ask are already in the product. So my action item that you haven't given, but the one I'm taking that I felt was, I'm going to go learn my product more. I'm going to dive in there because I should know it more. And so that was the one for me.
Yeah, mine was similar, which was how do I become a better partner to the other teams in the organization more broadly, right? How do I view us more as one cohesive team? That was mine. Any others you'd add in there, Lucas?
I think for me, for product people especially, I think you need to speak to at least one customer a week, if not more. And I think you need to be listening to at least 3 to 5 customer calls every week or two. And I think it's easy. Actually, you know what I will say? Block time. Like, go and block 3 hours in your calendar and make those 3 hours all about the customer. And one week it might be, I'm going to talk to one customer for 1 hour or 2 hours. And the next week it might be, I'm going to listen to 6 30-minute calls from the sales team in the last month, right? But block out 3 hours, make those 3 hours all about the customer. It's only 3 hours in your week. And the knowledge you will acquire will blow your mind just about your customers, your product, and your business.
See, I'm glad we gave you the time to think about it because that's great advice. And if you're a CS person, let them do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Help them do it.
Let me pluck out the calendar and do it.
Yeah, so good. Lucas, awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll let you get out of here. Thanks again for joining us today. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.